Hello everyone, I am so excited that we are talking about the heroes of the Bible. That's right, we are talking about the heroes of the Bible, and today we are going to be speaking about a man named Peter. Now Peter was one of Jesus' disciples and he did so many incredible things, but there's one thing we're going to talk about this morning that just is incredible. It is when Peter walks on water. That's right, Peter walks on water. I'm going to read from Matthew 14, from verse 22 all the way through to 33. It's a lot, but I know that we can do it. Are you ready? I'm ready. Okay, this is what it says. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. He dismissed the crowd where he fed 5,000 people. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. Wow. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat. He walked on the water and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Wow! Jesus walks on water. He calls out to Peter, and Peter walks on water as well. Now, I want to do a very simple experiment with a little bit of water. That's right, just a little bit of water and a coin, right? Just a little coin, normal little coin. Now, what do you think would happen if I put the coin in the water? Would it float on top or would it sink to the bottom? I mean, let's be honest now, right? Let's be honest. What do you think would happen? I think, because we just read this story, I think the coin is going to float on top of the water. What? No, of course, it's going to float on top of the water. I think that is going to happen. Should we see? Okay, are you ready? I'm going to put it over here so you see. It is going to float. Oh. It didn't float. That's so strange. Can we try it again? Is that okay if we try it again? Okay, we're going to try it one more time. Is the coin going to float on top of the water? Definitely not. That's crazy that two men were standing on top of water. This is what we call a miracle, right? This is what we call a miracle. Can I tell you something very quickly about Jesus on the water and Peter on the water? The only reason it happened is because Jesus is the creator of everything, along with God the Father. And because he's the creator of everything, and because he is God, he is in control of everything. We can't just go and walk out on water and do that. This was done for a very specific purpose. And the reason Peter is a hero of the Bible is because he was the rock that the church was based on. But in this moment, Peter trusted Jesus. What a big word. It's a small little word, but it's got so much meaning. Peter trusted Jesus. And there's three things I want to say to everyone who's watching this morning. To know Jesus is to trust Jesus. To know Jesus is to trust Jesus. Peter wouldn't have walked out onto the water if it was just a figment of his imagination. He wouldn't have walked out on the water if they had dropped something and it was floating off and going away. He wouldn't have done that. Peter got out onto the water because he knew it was Jesus. So, who should we trust? Of course, we must trust our parents. They always are looking out for us. They're always looking after us. We must trust our teachers to do what is right. We must trust the government to do what is right and the policemen to do what is right. But the one person that we need to trust over and above everybody else is God. And God says to Peter, Jesus says to Peter, get out of the boat in the middle of a storm and come to me. And Peter says, okay, if it really is you, I'm coming. I'm out on that water. I am coming to you. All of the other disciples were terrified. Can you imagine though? There's this massive storm going on and they're in the boat and they're going all over the place in the waves and it's crazy and the waves are crashing over and the wind is blowing this way. It's absolutely insane. And in the middle of that chaos, that craziness, Peter gets out of the safety of the boat and walks towards Jesus. That's just incredible. Peter must have asked the question, should I trust Jesus right now? He must have asked that question, should I trust Jesus in this moment? And the answer was obviously yes. Of course I must trust Jesus. He has not let me down. He's done such incredible work. And so the question we must ask ourselves this morning, today, is do I trust Jesus? Do I know him? Because if I know him and I know what he's about and I know how good he is and I know that he loves me, I can trust him. So to know Jesus is to trust Jesus. Second thing I want to say to you this morning is that to trust Jesus is to look to Jesus. To trust Jesus is to look to Jesus. Have you ever played a staring competition with someone and you just cannot win, right? Like let's do one right now. Shall we play a staring competition right now? And go. See, I lost. I blinked and I lost. But the thing about a staring contest is that you are focused. You are looking at that other person and you are not breaking eye contact whatsoever. You are making sure they're the only thing you see for the whole time. And this is exactly what life should be like with Jesus. Because we trust him, we know him, so we need to look to him. If we have our eyes on Jesus, it doesn't matter what's going on around us. It can be absolute chaos, like the storm that was going on around them, like the fact that the ocean was beneath their feet. That lake was beneath their feet. But Peter was looking at Jesus. Peter saw Jesus, and Peter trusted that Jesus was doing what was right. Incredible. To trust Jesus is to look to him. And we need to ask ourselves, are we looking to Jesus like Peter kept looking to Jesus throughout the rest of his life? Jesus, is this the right thing for me to do? Jesus, am I honoring you? Jesus, does this glorify you? Jesus, you're my best friend. Be with me in this difficult time. Are we looking to Jesus in everything that's going on in our lives right now? Jesus says to Peter, come. And Peter left the boat and he walked on the water to Jesus. But when Peter saw the wind and the waves, he became afraid and began to sink. He shouted, Lord, save me. And so while Peter is looking directly at Jesus, almost like that staring contest, I am looking directly at you. I am focused on you, Jesus. You are my goal. You are everything I want in this moment. Peter got distracted. And I'm sure it was easy to get distracted while walking on water in the middle of a storm. He gets distracted, and the Bible says he sees the wind. And what does the wind do when waves come up and crash? It pushes water all over the place. The wind must have been blowing his clothes around, like absolutely craziness going on in there. Peter moves his eyes from Jesus to what's going on around him. He loses focus. He stops looking to Jesus and he starts to look at the problems that are around him. And he starts to stop trusting. He starts to stop trusting. It's in that moment that he loses all concentration as he sees the water, as he sees the wind, as he sees just the rain probably pouring down. And as soon as he stops looking at Jesus and focusing in on Jesus, he starts to sink. He starts to get overtaken by the worries around him. He starts to get overtaken by the chaos that's around him. But just like Peter, we need to remember that Jesus hasn't left us. Peter is looking around and he starts to freak out and he starts to sink into the water. And the first thing he does is he says, Jesus, help me. He knew Jesus was there. He knew who Jesus was. He trusted in Jesus. He'd just taken his eyes off Jesus for a little bit of time. Immediately, Jesus helped him and pulled him up. To trust Jesus is to look to Jesus. When we move our eyes away from Jesus, we can very easily be distracted by the world and the worries and the cares and the frustrations and the chores that happen to just take up so much time in our lives. We must trust in Jesus and we must keep looking to Jesus. The third thing I want to say today is that to trust him, to trust Jesus, is to move towards Jesus. Peter didn't just get out the boat and go running up the nearest wave he could find. No, he walked towards Jesus. He wasn't just looking at Jesus. He wasn't just speaking with Jesus. He was moving towards Jesus. And so for us to trust in Jesus is moving towards what he wants for us, moving closer to him, having a deeper relationship with him in everything that we have. In our family life, in our school life, in our private lives, we are to get closer to Jesus because we trust him and we have our eyes on him, but we need to be close to him as well. If you are close to someone, you can hear them whisper. If you're far away from someone, you can't hear them whisper. They would have to shout at you to get your attention. Peter moves closer to Jesus on the water. He's walking on water. Let's remember that. That's just absolutely incredible. Wherever Jesus has called us to be, whether we're walking on water, or we're in school, or we're at home in lockdown, we need to move closer to Jesus. We can always move closer to Jesus. I just want to encourage you this morning that to know Jesus is to be able to trust in him. To be able to trust in him is to be able to see him and look at him, and to see him, to trust him, to see him, to look at him helps us move closer to Jesus. So this morning, what is it you're struggling with about God? What is it you're struggling with about school? What is it you're struggling with about family life? What are you struggling with in terms of the Bible and praying? God wants us to be closer to his son, Jesus Christ, all the time. Just like the hero of the Bible, Peter, trusted in him, got out of the safety of the boat, walked on the water in the middle of the storm. Keeping his eyes on Jesus, everything was fine. Moving towards him was fine. As soon as he got distracted, that's when the worries and the cares of the world took over him. We need to trust in Jesus. The world looks like it is in complete chaos, just like the storm on that lake. But if we keep our eyes on Jesus, just like Peter, and if we keep moving towards Jesus, and in the moments where we feel like we're being overwhelmed by the world, we call out to Jesus just like Peter, Jesus will be there for us. His promises never fail. He never goes back on his word. And that is such an incredible thing about God. He's not like us. He is so, so much higher than we are. He is so, so much better. He is perfect. And he's called us to be his friend. I'm excited every day to be one of his friends. And every day I need to remind myself to keep my eyes on Jesus, to keep moving towards Jesus. And I hope that the story of Peter, who got out of the boat, who walked towards Jesus, had his eyes on Jesus, is an encouragement for you today. Keep going. The world is crazy. There's all sorts going on, but Jesus can calm the storm and he can walk on water. And when he calls us to do incredible things and we listen, he is honored and glorified.